Hello again. I'm Pastor Jeff Zender, the head pastor of Fairview Reformed Presbyterian Church in western Pennsylvania in a small town called Ohioville. And I'm here to continue talking about the subject of friendship. In the first video, we introduced the subject and saw that the book of Proverbs tells us first to choose wisely with friendships. And second, it starts these four characteristics of friendship from the book of Proverbs. The first being that of constancy, being constant and loyal. And if you're not that way, it's not a friendship. So these four characteristics are directly taken from notes that I have that were printed and given to me from Dr. Jack Collins of Covenant Theological Seminary. And as I continue through these, I bring these to you because I think this is important information that's helpful to help you understand what true friendship is, so that you know your own weaknesses and maybe would like to be a good friend to others. Well, as we continue then, I will start this time by saying that maybe the subject of friendship is a delightful one to you because you love your friends and you want to be a better friend. That's wonderful. Maybe for some of you though, it's a tough point. There's been a time in my life I remember distinctly where I was just praying for a friend, praying for someone to be my friend, and that I had just a close companion that could do life with, that I could pray with about big things. And for some of you, you may go through seasons where you really struggle. You just long for somebody. I will tell you that you'll never find somebody, I think, that is just absolutely everything, that you share absolutely everything the same with. That's just, it's not that common. But, we're looking through the book of Proverbs. And what does the Proverbs teach us about the subject of friendship? First we saw was constancy. The second, let's jump right in. The second quality of friendship, according to the book of Proverbs, is this: candor. Candor. You might say, what is candor? Candor is the ability to speak freely and openly. So let's look at Proverbs 27, verse 6. If you have your own Bible, you can look it up. Proverbs 27, verse 6 says this: faithful are the wounds of a friend, but profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Excuse me, it doesn't have that conjunction but in there. It just says, and let me repeat, faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Wounds from a friend are called faithful here. When somebody has the courage to wound you with instruction, when you're becoming too proud or too whatever it may be, a friend has the courage to wound you. I think of Nathan, the prophet, who had the courage to speak frankly to David, who had sinned, and to tell him that he was the man in the story that Nathan told, in this parable that he told, to help show David, indirectly yet directly in a way, that David was the sinner who had wronged Bathsheba and Uriah. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. But profuse are the kisses of an enemy. And who do you think of that kissed? Don't you think of Judas? Here was a man who was putting on a show of being loyal to Jesus, but in the end, he betrays Jesus. And do you remember how he did it? With a kiss. You see, you may have friends who speak only good things about you. Maybe they're afraid of your disapproval, and they only speak good things about you, but never have the courage to actually say something challenging to you that maybe you need to hear. It's great to have them around. I'm sure they're humans made in the image of God, but do you really respect them like you respect a close friend? Or maybe you're that way with someone else, that you don't say what they need to hear because you're so afraid of losing them as a friend. Well, I'm sorry to tell you this, but that's not for maybe some of the pain you might have to endure. But it's a good pain, because I got to be faithful with the wounds of a friend to you, to say that that's not what a true friendship is. There comes a time where we have to be able to speak freely and openly to another. Proverbs 28 verse 23 says, "Whoever rebukes a man will afterward find more favor than he who flatters with his tongue." Collins adds, when he was looking at this verse, that word for afterward means in the end. So let me read that again, because it doesn't mean right after. It means in the end. Whoever rebukes a man will afterward, in the end, find more favor than he who flatters with his tongue. Which is to say, if you're somebody who just continues to flatter somebody, you won't find more favor with somebody. But if you have the courage to say something, you'll find more reward, more favor in the end. And again, as you look back, who do you respect more? The smiley yes people in your life who say everything nice and give you thumbs up and likes on all of your status updates and things that you say? Or the people who have the courage to challenge you? Not all the time. I mean, you don't want somebody just challenging you all the time. That's just a critic. But somebody who has the courage to say something. Candor is a mark of biblical true friendship. When someone is able to speak freely and honestly. So if that's friendship, then what is not friendship? What's not friendship is the inability to speak freely. Where you're around somebody and you're so afraid to speak your mind. If that's the case, I've got to tell you, that's just not a true friendship. But also, for your sake, if you can't tolerate the rebuke and correction of someone else, or if you can't tolerate somebody even talking in a certain way about something you treasure, then that's not a true friendship either. You know, I once knew a man who tried to speak an alternative point of view to his closest friend. But that closest friend couldn't hear it. And the person A who said it to him was very gentle about it. And he didn't cut down or say it. But the person B couldn't take it and responded with attacks and personal attacks. And my friends, if I can call you that, that's not what true friendship looks like. A true friend, even if you disagree with them, is able to speak openly. You know, I think about Peter and Jesus again. I talked to them with them about them the last time, but Peter had the audacity to try to speak to Jesus and talk him down from doing what Jesus had to do. And Jesus had to then say to him, "Get behind me, Satan, for you're not thinking the things of God, but the things of man." And I have to say that as much as it stinks to see Peter having done that, yet Jesus had a friend who was able to speak his mind, even if Jesus then in return could speak his mind and actually talk him right back down. You see, candor is the ability to speak openly and freely the things that you think without fear of retribution. So candor is a mark of friendship from the book of Proverbs. What wisdom. Third, what's the third quality of friendship? It's this. Counsel. So we've got constancy, candor, and now counsel. What does that mean? Proverbs 27 verse 9. You'll notice a lot of these come from chapter 27 in the Proverbs. It says, "Oil and perfume make the heart glad." Somebody who has a nice perfume. I'm not talking to those of you who have allergies with those kind of things, but perfume naturally brings a smile. And the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. A friend who's able to bring an earnest counsel to you, a word of correction or advice, is a mark of a good friend. Proverbs 27 verse 17 goes a step further. Oh, what a great verse this is, and a hard one. But iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. You know, if you want to stay dull in life, and you want to be just a blunt instrument that is unable to influence through a careful piercing, then avoid people's negative counsel. If you just want to be blunt and just hurt everybody and not have any real good influence in the end, just avoid people's negative counsel. But if you want to be sharp and pinpointed, to be able to carefully influence people with the cut of a knife, as it were, then allow people to be able to speak frankly to you as iron would sharpen iron. And iron, they clash, right? We often think of debates between men or men and women or women and women that they flatly disagree with each other. But in the process of that disagreement, you learn to sharpen your skills of talk. You start sharpen your skills of thinking. And so, iron, sharpening iron, a good friend is able to give counsel. So, if giving counsel is a mark of a friend, then what is not mark of a friendship is the opposite. So, somebody who can't give counsel. So, I would call this a party companion. I've known people who've gone to parties with people they are just convinced are their friends. And they go out night after night, maybe they're workmates. And so imagine you're going night after night, going out and just hanging out. Maybe you play games together. Maybe it's a group of friends who like to go party. And they're just always spending time with each other. They're doing entertainment things. They're spending lots of time. So they're gaining that experience. But then you realize if one of them brings up something deeper, like, well, what do you think? I'm not sure if I want to keep my job, and I'm not sure what so and so thinks of me, and I think I want to do X with my life. What do you think of that? And this is a good test of friendship. If that other person is able to give you something back, you've got yourself the start of a good friendship. But if they rebuff and have nothing to say and almost resent the fact that you made this deeper, then they're not there to be your good friend. And it's probably better that you found that out. But a good friend gives counsel. And this is why, by the way, in the church, when we as pastors and others see individuals falling away from the faith or falling away in their morality, we as pastors and elders, we obviously don't like to see that, like fathers, good fathers who want to see people living rightly. And one of the first things then we say is, who do they know closely? Because not only the faithful are the wounds of a friend. And so we look for somebody who's close to them so that they don't get any of us coming in with this is the way you should live and you shouldn't live, like the words of a king. But we know that those who are friends are able to speak more closely. So constancy is a mark of friendship from the Proverbs. Candor is a mark. Counsel is a mark. But is that all? Now think about it. If that is all, you have somebody who's regularly there, who's able to speak freely, and always gives you counsel. That would be kind of a hard friendship, wouldn't it? Lots of counsel. They're there, but they're always correcting or able to speak freely. There's one trait that we're missing still, and the Proverbs doesn't avoid this, but it's this. Being considerate. Consideration. Chapter 25, verse 17. Proverbs 25:17 says this: Let your foot be seldom in your neighbor's house, lest he have his fill of you and hate you. Meaning, if you want to be a good friend or a good neighbor, even on a more basic level, you don't keep overstaying your welcome. It's not a friend if you always get to stay at their house and they don't want you to, but they're too afraid to say it. No, a good friend is considerate of the other person. And chapter 25, verse 20 says this: Whoever sings songs to a heavy heart is like the one who takes off a garment on a cold day, and like vinegar on soda. Meaning, you're considerate not just of their space, but you're considerate also of their condition, right? It's being sensitive. Some of you may be mourning people, and some of you may not be mourning people, but this is talking to those of you who are not. And the person who comes in and sings songs to your heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment on a cold day. But even further is if you're in a time of sadness and sorrow, and somebody's coming in trying to sing songs to you, say, oh, just chip her up, chip her up, chip her up. That's not a good friend. We see that in the book of Job like crazy. For chapters, Job's friends are doing this to him, and he is suffering. And yet, what's going on? They're not being considerate, and therefore, they're not really biblically being good friends. No, the Bible tells us to mourn with those who mourn, and so it ought to be with friends. So being considerate to their feelings in Proverbs 27 verse 14 also speaks about sensitivity to their feelings. Oh, this is the one about rising early. I got a little ahead of myself. Whoever blesses his neighbor with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, will be counted as cursing. So the one who blesses his neighbor with a loud voice in the morning. How's it going, Fred? Yelling at the top of their lungs. Get up, it's chipper time, time to wake. Today is the day to live. And they're just yelling away, and you're just rising. Rising early in the morning will be counted as cursing. So we must be sensitive to the people. That's a mark of friendship. But also, chapter 26, verse 18 to 19. This talks about knowing when a joke has gone too far. Proverbs 26, verse 18 to 19. It says this: like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, I am only joking. Do you get that? There are some people who just love comedy and they never can stop. They think that, let me put it this way. Humor is good. It brings grace to a situation. I love having somebody who's humorous around. They just bring some grace and peace to a situation. But there comes a time when humor has to stop. And some people's friendships are only about being humor and making jokes and constantly making jokes. But here it goes even further. And it says, like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death. And then says, and deceives his neighbor and says, I'm only joking. Wow. And yet we know how folks can do that. They're not sensitive and they're not considerate. They want a friend on a surface level, really. But when it comes down to actually caring about the person and being considerate to them, they can't go that far. So what is not friendship? If consideration is a mark of friendship, and who's not a true friend is somebody who is inconsiderate. And so what do we see here? We see that true friendship, according to the book of Proverbs, or marks of true friendship, are constancy, candor, counsel, and consideration. Perhaps, are you looking for a friend? Perhaps you need to learn constancy. You fly in and out of relationships because perhaps you're afraid of someone knowing you too long or too much. Okay, but don't be surprised if you have few friends. What about candor? Are you a person that is able to speak freely to others, or can you speak freely to them? Perhaps you're oversensitive and you need to start letting people speak freely. Or perhaps you are so fearful of losing the friendships that you have that you're not able to be yourself and speak freely to them. Without learning candor, you will lack a true, deep friendship. But perhaps you need to learn counsel. Maybe you are somebody who is always joking, and it's time to actually allow them to give counsel to you and you to them. Sometimes I think people want this, but they don't know how to do it. Perhaps you need to learn consideration. You're overhard. You're a bulldozer. And life is a hammer. Life is, full of nails, and you are the hammer. And you're just bulldozing everybody, and you're not considerate. You're thinking only of yourself and your pleasure in the friendship instead of actually caring about the other person. That's not friendship either, and perhaps that's something that is for you to learn or for others to learn. Friendship in the Proverbs has these four qualities: constancy and candor, counsel and consideration. But if your friends don't have these qualities, then maybe they're not really true friends. But neither maybe that's your own doing or theirs. But maybe you want this, but it's a little hard to do so. Well, let me tell you this. All of us fail at friendship. We're not constant. We don't have candor. We don't give good counsel, or we don't want to, or we don't want to receive it. and we're not considerate. And the only way we can be able to provide that kind of friendship to others is having somebody give that kind of friendship to us. And you know who's the closest friend for all mankind? John 15, verse 15, Jesus says this: "No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you." Did you hear that? Jesus, the suffering servant, the one who goes to die for your sins, has also called you his friend. And he says in John 15:13, two verses before that, it says, "Greater love has no one than this, that he lay down his life for his friends." Jesus has laid down his life for you. And what does that mean for you? That means he has called you his friend. So you may struggle in this life to find good friendships. You may have times of victory where you have them. But at the end of the day, Jesus is your first friend and will be for eternity. And it's Jesus Christ's willing friendship to you that gives you the security and ability to then form and forge friendships with others. Well, I hope you found these 4 qualities as enriching as I found them to be when I discovered them again from the book of Proverbs. As you go about the practice of making good biblical friends in this life, these 4 qualities are constancy, candor, counsel, and consideration. God is the great master of us all, and so herein ends your masterclass on the subject of friendship. God be with you and protect you. May his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. God bless.